Coming to you from the home of the mini trees, inspirational, motivational, so come along with us.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Pixel Talk. This week's edition brings you an interview with Mr. John Donovan, the Chief Strategy Officer and Group President of AT&T Technology and Operations. Vince Bugney's tutorial on how to make a grilled cheese sandwich. Peyton Robertson's discussion on gravitational waves, important because of the recent discoveries, and Shannon Madden's interview of Cyrus Crockett. Hello, my name is Tej Singh, and I'm broadcasting from New Jersey on behalf of Stanford Online High School students from around the globe. So, hello world. With us here today is Mr. John Donovan. He's the Chief Strategy Officer and Group President of AT&T Technology and Operations. Glad to have you here, Mr.
Thanks.
Donovan. So because of your job, your title is quite a mouthful. I can only imagine how busy you must be. What does the average day look like for you?
Well, I'm an early riser. I get up around 4:30. The operational responsibility really requires that I stay constantly connected. So the undertone of my life is every few minutes, without social networks, I still have to sort of check in. But what I'm looking for is not the who, but the what. And so there's that dimension of it. But it's like most people, you only get 24 hours in a day. You want to make the best use you can. You try to have the highest impact and dedicate the most hours to the most important thing. And within that context, it's busy but manageable.
So I can only imagine, yeah, sure. And so since our audience is mainly high schoolers who will be getting their own plans soon for fun, I was just wondering what sets AT&T apart from other carriers, or why did you come to the company, and what makes it such a great company?
Because we're a technology company. If you look at the history, it's a remarkable company. It's got 140 years of history. So you have heritage and legacy of a lot of great people that have come before you and done extraordinary things. If you look at AT&T Labs, the extraordinary science there, we've won 8 Nobel Prizes. And so those folks who came before you, in an industry that was born by Alexander Graham Bell, it sets a very high bar for what you do, and you couple that with the challenges we have going forward, makes it a very exciting place to be.
Yeah, you sure are stepping on the shoulders of giants. So on the same topic, or sticking to the topic, how was your high school experience like? Did you have any particular teachers or courses from you experienced or loved in which you took away something that stuck with you and influences you or helped you in life today?
Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story. I'm an inner city kid. I'm one of 11, and I grew up without a whole lot, and probably had a much easier time in high school than I should have. And probably the most impactful thing was my typing teacher in my junior year, Mr. Viverka. He told my mother that I was a waste of the tremendous potential I have, and it was just very funny feedback to get from a typing teacher. So, kind of rolling through all of my science and math and all those things, but my mother came home and said, "Your typing teacher thinks that you have way more potential than you're using." It did strike me as humorous at the time, but certainly motivating.
So now looking back, is there advice you would have for our audience or high schoolers whom they could use to be almost successful or fill your shoes one day as leading a huge company?
Yeah, I think that my advice is that, while you're young, you should play the game for breadth, not for expertise. I think the variety of experiences matters a lot. And so, whether it was when I was 18 doing explorations that weren't all positive to today, if you look at today and you look at what I read, I'm always reading different dimensions. I'm reading about science that has nothing to do with the business, but might stimulate an idea or push a boundary. And so that's a learned behavior. And the earlier you can figure out that learning a wide variety of topics, not at a surface level, but with some degree of depth, really helps you later in life as you start to connect these dots.
Yeah, sure. Now using this insight, because lots of us are so busy nowadays, like the teens. If you had like a magic bullet or like 10 extra hours a week as a high schooler, looking back, what skill would you have learned or done with it?
Well, the great equalizer in life is the same number of hours. So there's no magic pill to go manufacture hours. So I want to highlight the fact that that prioritization challenge is no different for me than it is for the high schooler, than it is for my youngest daughter who's in seventh grade. You always want to have enough time to balance, to have downtime, to have friend time, to have family time. If I were to go back and say I would have invested um, 10 more hours, in today's world, those 10 hours wouldn't be spent on video games, on watching video on my tablet or my phone, or necessarily just hanging around. I think it would be structuring a way to read in areas that are unrelated to what I'm doing that day, that force me to pull out of the mode that I'm in, and be flexible, if you will, and go into new and various subjects. And then when I was in high school, I could not have imagined that I would have found things that were of interest to me that weren't in my world, because I always felt like I am in total control of what's happening here. And then you go back and look at it and say, wow, was that a myopic view? It would have been so much better if someone had really pounded me to read.
Sure, you couldn't have said it better. So now moving on to our lighthearted segment. If you could spend a day with any person living today, who would it be?
Good questions. Probably my mother. And I don't really, the funny thing is that for a high schooler, that's the last thing you'd say. But my mother is going on her 90th birthday, and once you get through this whole idea where mostly your parents are giving you advice, and you get to a point where you're giving each other advice, to where you're starting to give them some advice, it changes that dynamic. And so I don't know of a person on this planet, Tage, that I wouldn't love to spend a day with, to learn them and understand, and to visit their lives and walk in their shoes. And I'm only saying my mother because once you get to this new relationship level, you have kids, you're traveling, we don't live in the same city, I don't see her that often. You really value that time.
Sure thing. I'd like to spend a day with you if I could. So if you could be a part of any historical event in history, what would it be?
When you go back and take a look at the great technological achievements, you go back to the turn of the century, you look at the invention of electricity, you look at, the Hoover Dam. Um, there are very few events in life that when you're there, you recognize that they're historic. And so I have been to so many great events and witnessed so many things, but I don't recall ever sitting with one and saying, not only is this epic, I know that they're going to be writing about this 100 years from now. So without picking one, I would just like to, in the moment, recognizing that I'm in the midst of one of those things that they're going to be writing about for 100 years. And so I'm still searching for that thing. And I mean, I'm talking about all dimensions of it, whether it's the day that a volcano erupts, love to see that, or whether it's an event like Tiananmen Square that transforms how people think about society and politics. Um, Love to be there to witness one of those epic events.
So it's a tradition to end Pixel Talk with a short, lighthearted segment we do called This or That. It has a series of fun questions we like to ask our guests.
Fun
And
for who? For you or me?
you have two options. What'd you say?
I said fun for you or for me?
Hopefully for both.
Okay, good.
So would you like to participate?
Love to.
Okay. Crushed ice or cubed ice?
Crushed.
Pancakes or waffles?
Neither.
What, would you like cereal?
No, I actually eat dinner food for breakfast. I never fell in love with breakfast food. You're more likely to see me eat last night's ribs for breakfast than you are pancakes or waffles.
Well, I guess I'll skip the next question. Next question was in the morning, do you pour cereal in the bowl first or milk? But so would you rather be able to stop time or fly?
Fly.
Would you rather have one wish granted today or 3 granted in 10 years?
I'd rather have one wish today.
Online shopping or shopping in a store?
I would rather be held underwater for 3 minutes than go shopping in a store. So online wins every time.
Facebook or Twitter?
Neither. Sitting face to face.
Okay. Would you rather be able to read everyone's mind all the time or know their future?
Know their future.
And I was going to ask Dr. Seuss this, but green eggs or ham?
Ham.
So this brings us to the end of this Pixel Talk. We'd like to thank Mr. Donovan for graciously sparing his time here and inspiring not only the Stanford OHS community, but kids around the country and perhaps even around the world.
Thanks for having me. It was very enjoyable.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Cooking with Vince. I'm Vince Bugney, and today we're going to be making grilled cheese sandwiches. So the ingredients that we're going to be using today are bread. I have some Bob's Red Mill 10-grain bread. Also a mix of cheese. I prefer to use grated cheese because it melts a little bit more evenly. This here is a mix of Monterey Jack and cheddar cheese. I think it's a really great blend. I also have some garlic powder as well as some grated Parmesan cheese and a bit of warmed butter. The first step is to put butter on one side of every piece of bread. This is where it's crucial that butter be at room temperature because it makes it a lot easier to spread. So after you apply the butter to each slice of bread, you're going to want to put some garlic powder and some Parmesan cheese right on top of that butter, just to give it a little bit of extra flavor. So now with our slices of bread sufficiently buttered and seasoned, I'm going to go ahead and flip 2 over and then start applying the cheese to them. Now that I have a good amount of cheese on the 2 slices, I'm going to go ahead and transfer the bread onto the pan. Now I'm going to set my griddle for 300 degrees. That's a pretty good temperature, so that way you're not burning the bread before you actually melt the cheese. You want to have the butter be on the outside, because that's what's going to make it nice and crispy on the outside. So make sure the butter faces up and then also in contact with the griddle. And now we whip. It's been about 10 minutes. I think my sandwiches are finally done, so I'm going to go ahead and take them off the grill. And of course, it wouldn't be a grilled cheese sandwich if it's not cut diagonally. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And now it's time to enjoy.
Hey everyone, I'm Peyton Robertson, editor of the science section for Pixel Talk, and today we wanted to talk about gravitational waves, something that you might have seen in the news recently, and why it's important. And basically it proves Einstein's model that led him to develop the theory of relativity. And he imagined gravitation with the following analogy. So say you have a large cloth sheet that's stretched between like 4 posts. So it's taut, say you put a large ball on top of it now, there's going to be an indentation in the cloth. And he imagined this cloth as analogous to the gravitational fabric of the universe. So then say that you have a second ball, maybe perhaps slightly smaller, that you put next to the large ball. It will slowly move inwards towards the larger ball, just as all objects in the universe do. They are attracted to one another. Then, now say we have 2 very large balls, and they slowly come together and eventually they collide. And since they have a large weight on the cloth, we can consider them as having a large gravitation in Einstein's analogy. So take them to be black holes, for example. Say they collide together, and when black holes collide, they merge. And just as the collision of two balls would, it sends ripples across the universe that can be felt everywhere, even from Earth. And it just so happens that two black holes did collide 100 billion years ago, 100 billion light years away. So the light from that collision just left the black hole and just got to Earth. And that happened 6 months ago. So sensors around Earth measured this change in the gravitation and analyzed the data, and we found that there's no anomaly into the machinery and that gravitational waves do actually exist as Einstein proposed. We always knew they were theoretically perfect, but not always, they didn't have a physical proof attached to them, because the vibrations are so small that almost a tenth of the width of a proton is what these machines have to measure. They weren't as accurate until now, and now we are able to measure it, and Einstein's theory was confirmed, as basically all of his other theories have been.
Hi, I'm Shannon Madden, and today I'm here with Cyrus Crockett, a fellow OHS student. So we're going to talk to Cyrus about a charity he founded, the Mongolian Scholars Fund. So Cyrus, can you tell us a little bit about this foundation?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, our foundation, the Mongolian Scholars Fund, is a nonprofit that was established in 2013. And what we do is we strive to keep kids in the Gir districts of Ulaanbaatar in school. This is primarily accomplished through providing clothing to these kids, as well as some educational materials in the schools themselves. So a little bit of background, Mongolia is currently undergoing one of the biggest economic and social changes that it's ever had to. Essentially, there's been a huge displacement of nomads from the Mongolian countryside. This is a result of both mining and bad weather patterns and natural disasters, a phenomenon known as zood, which essentially kills livestock and therefore destroys the livelihood of nomads. It's a really bad situation for them. In any case, over the past 10 years, what we've seen from this is we've seen hundreds of thousands of nomads then sort of flock to the capital of Ulaanbaatar, which is also Mongolia's only city, in search of a better life, better lives for their children, economic security, things like this. However, this hasn't exactly been, the case. It's a little bit more complicated than that. Basically, once these individuals arrive, first of all, they're not able to actually live in the city itself. The city is Soviet era with crumbling infrastructure and isn't being developed very quickly. And there isn't really a lot of good cheap housing for these individuals to move into, so they end up living outside of the city in what are known as Gir districts, which are essentially slums by Western standards. It's basically they're living in tents outside of the city itself. The problem with this is that this means that kids are far from the schools in the city, and any schools that have been established in the Gir districts themselves are far apart as well. So a particular problem is during the winter. Mongolia is essentially in Siberia's backyard. It's very cold in the winter. Temperatures are in, below negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit for long periods of time. This proves to be problematic when kids have to go to school in the morning, because when they're not equipped with the proper clothing, if it's a 2-mile walk or even a 1-mile walk, it's not exactly, feasible with regular clothing. So that's what we really attempt to do, is we attempt to keep kids going to school through the winter, have them not dropping out, primarily through providing clothing, specifically boots and coats. And so far we've been relatively successful. We've worked with a couple schools, we've clothed a few hundred kids, but we hope to expand.
Wow, that sounds incredible. So I've never heard of this situation before. How did you get involved, and how did you kind of figure out you wanted to start this charity?
Sure. So I got involved because I had a friend. She's actually a history professor at Cornell, and she was very interested in it. She's very interested in East Asian studies. She subsequently in 2013 was planning a trip to travel to Ulaanbaatar and go and conduct some ethnography because she was aware of the situation, she knew what was happening. And so I was wondering if I could go along. She invited me, thankfully. And so I was able to go, and I was able to sit down with these families and interview them and talk to them about sort of their lives and everything that happening to them. And it really just struck me in terms of witnessing it firsthand and really not seeing a lot of help that was currently being administered. The problem with a place like Mongolia is it isn't a place that you typically associate with needing aid. There are a lot of areas of the world where there are terrible things happening, but there's more aid going there than, say, a place like Mongolia simply because it's more publicized. In Mongolia, this kind of stuff isn't publicized, and it's not publicized throughout the Western world generally as much as it should be. So I was, I guess, disillusioned just sort of with the lack of attention that the situation was getting. And I decided, and I sort of just, I guess, thought, if I can do something, maybe I can begin to raise awareness about this and begin to maybe address some of the issues. But yeah, that was the, I guess, basic reasoning.
That's incredible, and it's pretty great that we have you as a OHS student to learn from and to hear about. So thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for the interview. I enjoyed it.
Thanks for watching. Until then,